guess it's my signal to start now. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Quick note at the beginning. I have my speaker notes on my phone. I'm not disinterested or asking Claude to come up with my talk for me. So just so you know, okay? I got a lot to share with you, so I'm not going to take a whole lot of time to explain everything and just get right into it. And hopefully, if you have any questions, you can ask them at the end. You can ask me. I'll be around today and tomorrow. But first of all, just quickly about myself. My name is Lian. I'm currently a developer relations specialist at Rabobank, which is a Dutch bank. I think the second biggest bank or the third biggest bank maybe in the Netherlands. Before that, I've been a cloud native consultant, developer advocate, platform engineer, what have you. And I originally actually come from the land of software engineering. Also, this is something that I realized when Robert was giving his talk. I also have hobbies. I love stage performance. I do theater, stand-up theater, improv theater, stand-up, musical theater, whatever you like. I'm gonna actually be in a Shakespeare play next month, where I play a wall. So if you have questions about that, feel free to ask me. But yeah, like I said, I started from a web development role and moved more into like infrastructure, backend stuff, and then cloud native. And in the last years, I was helping companies and developers adopt new technologies. And I've been doing a lot of public speaking. And my talks, at the later stage at least, are all about how to actually make technology work for humans. So I'm not a person who gets like super deep into like every single like byte how to optimize everything, but I'm very interested in like making tech work for people and not the other way around. So I think this talk in some ways is a culmination of the work that I've done, the talks that I've given before, and I want to share with you my approach to turn developers from users to advocates. So I've recently come across this study by Google about platform engineering, and it states that 55% of organizations have already adopted platform engineering, which is a pretty amazing number if you think about it, but only 27% of those have reported to successfully integrate best practices at the moment. This might be something that sounds familiar to you, but this is a pretty common failure pattern, which I call technically impressive ghost towns. So I mentioned this earlier in the panel, if you were here. You built this beautiful platform, you use best practices, the architecture is amazing, the design is amazing, no one uses it. Why does this happen? Multiple reasons. What I can say that what I've seen what often happens is that a technical stakeholder, manager probably, comes to a conference, hears everything about platform engineering. Oh my God, it sounds so great. We don't have that expertise in-house. Let's hire some externals. The externals come in, build this beautiful platform, never talk to any developers most likely, and the reality really is that the organizational maturity might not actually be ready to use the potential of a platform to its fullest. So let's take a quick step back, actually, into the ancient history. I didn't mention this before, but when I first worked with something that we would not call a platform, that was about 10 years ago. That was like, I mean, Kubernetes existed, but it wasn't as ubiquitous as it is right now. And when I started, this is how we used to deploy. So you started a company, and you would first inherit scripts from your onboarding buddy, right? So they would just give you some scripts, and you had to adjust them a little bit because obviously your machine is different than their machine. And let's say you have a build script to build your artifacts, and then you have a deploy script that would push their artifacts into production. Then at some point, some smart people might have said, oh, why don't we extract those into services? Like some shared services, for example, like a shared CI runner, right? That was a very common pattern, I think. And yeah, that was great. At some point, maybe someone came up with the idea, why don't we now use these services and put them in a shared thing? Like we want a unified experience for these services. And that's kind of like the idea of platform engineering, right? We want to have like a single point of entrance for the developers, but within the platform, we still have these services that we wrote and perfected at the beginning of this journey. Because the real platform services are the scripts we wrote along the way. Aww. So what I'm trying to say is that in a platform world, what we need are developers. They are clients to services, but in a platform world, they are contributors. And we need developers to share with us their best practices, the tools and automations they use every day to make themselves successful. And we need to use that, and that needs to become part of the platform. Because the key to inner sourcing really lies in treating your project your platform as a shared project. And if you follow this logic to the end or to a further place, really what you realize is that platform adoption is actually not as much a technical problem as it is an advocacy problem. And with my background in developer advocacy, I know that we can use DevRel techniques to help us with that. Oopsie. Well, okay, so speaking of DevRels, have you ever heard the term developer advocate or developer relations? Yeah, I think probably most. Does anyone know what they actually do? Including most DevRels, I would argue. The term developer advocacy, developer relations comes from the open source world, right? Where everyone is allowed to contribute, everyone's supposed to contribute. And some companies, especially those that build their go-to-market strategy on open source projects, they've noticed that it would be very helpful to have a role that helps with the experience of developers specifically to contribute to their open source project. It's a bit different now, there's a lot of different kinds of DevRels, a lot of them just do conference speaking, but the original idea was to understand this developer journey from the point where they will discover a tool, they will evaluate it for their uses, they will learn how to actually build stuff with it, then they will start building things, and finally, they will scale usage up. For example, they will bring this tool to other teams in the company, tell them about it, oh, this is great. And the job of a developer advocate really is to make this journey as frictionless as possible. So based on my experience in developer relations and everything, and being a platform engineer for quite a long time, I've developed something that I would like to call the platform advocacy framework. And the idea is that for one thing, it will help us turn passive users into really passionate advocates. But more than that, it also seeks to understand the problem holistically from these three different dimensions: the organization, the platform itself, and the individuals in the organization. Because only when you put those three together can you make sure that your actions actually have the impact that you want them to have. So why do we need to look at these three dimensions? Why can't we just look at the platform? I will try to illustrate this with a real case study. So one of my former clients, when I just started freelancing, I joined this organization. It was a governmental organization, meaning quite bureaucratic. And the culture of it, I would say, is like general apathy. So people were generally just like not really invested, didn't really care, didn't really push for modernization. That was kind of, I think if I say that, you can probably imagine what I mean. But the way that things were getting done was very driven by individual heroes. And also management would know, if I want to get stuff done, I have to talk to this guy and this lady and this person, right? And the problem is that this general apathy and this kind of like individual hero-driven culture, they often go together. Because if I'm working on something, right, and then my manager comes in and says, stop everything, I'm taking out this high performer out of your team, they're going to build this other thing now. What am I doing? Like, what's the point? Like, why am I even trying, right? And then this is a thing that unfortunately kind of like gets into this like cycle of hell. I don't know actually, but you know what I mean, right? So the hero-driven culture kind of like feeds into the apathy and vice versa. So one of the dimensions, as I said, we're looking at the platform first. Where are the gaps in our platform? And I think Robert already showed this earlier, and maybe you've heard about this already. The CNCF has developed a platform maturity model. The table, each of those rows represent a different aspect of the internal, of a developer platform, and the columns represent 4 levels of maturity. So provisional basically means it's just starting, we're just emerging. Operational, we're in a stage where things become everyday work. On a scalable level, we can start absorbing changes and growth, and when we're in an optimizing stage, then we're already anticipating needs of the future. Now the aspects, and I can't go into everything super deeply, right? So I invite you to really take a look at this. There's a lot of interesting information too that you should be reading up on. But basically, investment, we're looking at how staff and funds are allocated. By adoption, we're looking at how users are discovering the platform capabilities and why they would use them. With interfaces, we're looking at how users are consuming the platform capabilities. For operations, we're looking at how platforms are planned, prioritized, developed, and maintained. And then finally, with measurement, we're looking at whether there is a process of gathering and incorporating feedback and learning. And it's important to understand that these aspects are completely independent of each other. You will see quite often that platforms are quite advanced in some aspects, but not as much in others. That's totally fine. Doesn't mean that you have to be operational on everything. It's just a way to understand your platform aspects. Now, the problem with this is that it's super useful. It's a very, very powerful, useful tool, and it will help you identify quick and easy points of attack. But it also might seduce you to act prematurely, where you rush into action without considering the culture or individual capabilities. So one example is that during this engagement, we were trying to build this like CI library. We were using Azure DevOps pipelines. Let's not get into that, but that's what we were using. And we were thinking, oh, let's create these shared functions and invite our users also to contribute their functions that they're using, because we knew that people were building stuff and that was getting copy-pasted. So we were like, instead of copy-pasting, let's have a central kind of repository, right? And actually, if you look at the maturity model, you can see that CI library, it's basically an interface, right? It's a capability that a platform has, and we would consume it through the CI library. But the problem was that we were trying to create basically a self-service solution here, like something in the scalable area, where it then turned out the use of the CI wasn't standardized at all. There was no standard, and we were trying to self-service something, automate something that wasn't even standardized. So that was the problem here. That also was even further proven by the fact that even the members in our own team had to be reminded to use the library. So we're clearly not solving a problem that anyone actually had. So the next dimension we're looking at are the individuals who can help us drive adoption. This is based on the Orbit model. Orbit is a group of developer advocates, and in the Orbit model, we're looking at individuals and their potential to drive adoption for us. Now, in this model, there's 2 axes. The one is engagement, so how involved are people with the platform, and influence. How much influence do they have within the organization? And there's these 4 quadrants. Each of them, I have defined a persona that you might have encountered or will encounter. On the low influence, low engagement corner, we have the detached observers. These are people who are not very interested in the platform and are also not well connected within the group. Might be people who just started, or people who have a very, very narrow scope, external contractors who just do one thing and then leave again. In the high engagement, low influence corner, we have the independent fans. So these are people who are very invested in your platform, but not super influential within the organization. Could be people who just joined, so they haven't made those connections yet, but they might have previous experience with platform, which is why they're engaged already. Could also be people who like to tinker, like to contribute, just keep their heads down. They're just not interested in like networking and making a splash. Then in the high influence, low engagement corner, we have the influential skeptics. These are people who are influential mostly due to their role in the organization. Maybe they're not super hands-on, so maybe they don't see the value add of your platform yet. And these are quite important because they are high risk, but also a great opportunity. Because they are influential, if they endorse your platform, that could mean a massive boost. But if they reject it, it could, in theory, also kill your platform immediately. And then in the last corner, high influence, high engagement, these are your golden geese. These are the expert multipliers. They usually enjoy great reputation. They are very hands-on, probably helped a lot of people thanks to their deep expertise within the platform. They're intimately familiar, probably contributed to your platform, and are probably also your most valuable feedback channels. What happens often is that platform teams will just only build for these people now because they're the only ones who ever give you feedback, right? And that can be very dangerous because in the worst case, the gap between these expert multipliers and everyone else might get bigger the more you only listen to them. And as I said before, like especially in DevRel, the people who don't want to talk to you are the people whose feedback is the most valuable. And one of the things that I tried to do was survive an internal user group. And the problem here was that this is just basically the people who are using the platform, but we didn't really make use of the multipliers or took care of the skeptics. So I don't know if you know this saying, like if you put like a bad apple with some good apples, all the apples are getting bad, right? And if you put a good apple within bad apples, they're also getting bad. So it's not enough to just put a bunch of apples together. You have to like give a direction. You have to give people maybe like little jobs or something to like go into the direction that you want them to go. And I will talk a little bit about that in down the line. So the third dimension is the culture. This is based on a book called Tribal Leadership. I highly, highly recommend it. This is about how much influence and capability a person feels that they will have. And there's 5 stages. We're going to skip stage 1 because it's not super relevant. It's like 2% of all organizations that are in this cultural stage. But on stage 2, the way that people think about themselves is that, or their job is like, oh, my life sucks. It's not life sucks, because they see, for some people, life doesn't suck. It's just that my life sucks. So that's more like the relationships people have are more like trauma bonding, right? We're not really doing stuff. We're just like telling each other how much everything sucks. These people who just see like, I'm a victim of this very unfair system because it's not about how hard you work, it's just about who you know. Then on stage 3, we have these people who think, oh, I'm great, and everyone else sucks. These are people who are very ego-driven, lone warriors. They seek to outperform others. They're not really into like helping. The only relationship that exists are 2 ways, and the only way that information flows is 2 ways. And they also only give as much information to you as you need to make them successful, right? Then finally, on the 4th stage, now we're moving into a more collaborative culture, mission-driven, more focused on the bigger picture. Knowledge, power, and praise is freely shared, and the more you share, the more you get. Now we have triadic relationships, so the relationship between 3 people. So if you tell me you have a problem, instead of me telling you how to solve it, I'm going to say, let's get this 3rd person involved. And that will create ripple effects. And now you have this very collaborative culture. And then finally, stage 5, again, we're going to ignore it because it only affects 2% of all organization. Just so you know, it's about like, it's not we're great, it's like humanity is great, life is great. That's something that you don't encounter that often, unfortunately. Oh yeah, sorry. And important here to understand is that you cannot skip any stages. Only when I've done stage 3, I've played it through, I've been there, done that, and I see the limitations of my behavior and understand only when I work with other people will I be more successful than I could ever be working by myself, which they call the epiphany. Only then can I advance to stage 4. Wow, I am so behind on my time. Okay, so now I want to talk to you about something that actually worked, the pilot program. We invited teams and engineers who were very, like our expert multipliers, to beta test some of our capabilities for the platform. And that worked really well. I mean, we didn't fully understand this cultural impact and everything, but I think we had like a gut feeling about it. And we handpicked these people who were showing this like lone wolf behavior, and we told them, if you help us, you're going to be so great, and you're going to help the developers around you, and you're going to get so much praise. Isn't that great? Because it feeds into that stage 3 kind of success thinking. But more than that, also, they will see that their impact is actually helping people. It's making everyone better, so maybe it's better to help other people rather than just working for myself. And we were signaling to the other stage 2 everything sucks people that achieving actually gives you benefits, right? You'll be seen, you'll be, hailed, whatever, but also you get like earlier access to features. So by that way, I think we did like a little bit of a culture shift here. Okay, so that was the mental model, and I will go very quickly through the cycle, how to actually apply this framework in your everyday work. So we'll do a quick assessment of the current state, then we will diagnose our issues, we will intervene in some way, and finally we will iterate through this cycle, and we will analyze our success, and then we will rinse and repeat. And to explain that, I will talk about another case study, how this would work in production, because I worked here when I was in the early stages of developing this framework. And this was a large-scale organization that manufactured kitchen and household appliances. The culture and values were actually driven by a very clear mission. So everyone was very clear on like, what's the brand here? What are we trying to kind of like tell the outside world? The only thing was that there was virtually complete freedom over tools, so you could choose basically whatever language you wanted, whatever framework you wanted. The problem here is that it will just remove a pull towards a platform because you have no standards, right? So assessing. There's multiple ways to assess. You can do like quantitative assessments, like surveys, analytics. You can do qualitative assessments, like user interviews. In this case, I chose to do user interviews because I also wanted to build personal relationships, so it's really helpful to just talk to people, ask them questions. Every time I talked to a person, I asked them to give me 3 more names of people to talk to, and then you start building up like a dependency graph a little bit. So this is what it would look like. I just scored the platform, for example, against the 5 platform aspects and the 4 maturity stages. In this case, investment, adoption, interface, operations were all between operational and scalable. So standards were there to some extent, and it went into everyday work, and we were moving towards self-service and scalable maturity. Except for the measurement, that was very provisional, like the feedback was more given at the water cooler. There was not a structured way to collect feedback. Tribal culture, as I said, very strong mission-driven. A lot of people thought of themselves as good. I don't think I've met anyone who thought, oh, my life just sucks. I think everyone at least thought, I'm pretty great. And then some people were also in service of the group. So we were somewhere in between 3 and 4 here. And we're just escaping the I'm great stage. And then finally, I just found a bunch of people, because of this hero-driven culture also here, you will find a lot of people who are either influential skeptics or expert multipliers. So a lot of people who have a lot of influence on either side of the divide. In the diagnostics, so if you remember the developer journey stages, this is where I usually start. I will ask myself, where do we see bottlenecks here? Because inner sourcing adoption actually happens only there. So if they're all stuck somewhere there, you will never be able to get them to contribute. So this is how it starts. I will start looking at the bottlenecks. In this case, I found like evaluate and learn was blocked to poor docs experience. If I look at the platform, there was a developer portal. It was not used in the way that was most conducive to success. Also, there were, like I said, lack of standards, not a clear scope of the platform team. I think I asked once, what is the platform? And I was told, the platform is everything that the platform team does, which is very, very hard to prioritize. So not something I would recommend. Tribal culture, what is possible? As I said, strong mission, really collaborative culture, but because the docs experience was so difficult, people really always went to these 2-3 people that they knew could help them, but that means that everything depends on these individual people. And then finally, the orbit model would, again, surface these people that we have to take a look at. In the intervention stage, I'm doing it like an experiment. We start with a hypothesis. This is a lot of text. Basically what it says is, docs weren't super good about discovering things, experience wasn't great, manual intervention because of that. What's the action? Well, we can improve the docs, and specifically, I was proposing something called a capability catalog. So you're listing the capabilities of your platform not by the name of the tool that you're implementing, but by the actual capability. So instead of SQL, you say storage. It's a small shift, but it makes a big difference for discoverability. Success metrics, well, we were just looking at, there were a lot of tools in Backstage. They were not linked to any capability, which also means people were just working on stuff, but not really thinking about, is this actually adding to anything that the platform would be doing? Which makes sense, because the platform wasn't defined. It was just everything that you do is platform. Success threshold, when are we successful? When the number goes down. That's a pretty easy threshold to hit, because, you know, if it goes down by 1, we're already winning. So this was from the presentation that I gave there, which was like, let's split up the documentation into 3 sub-documentation parts. We have the capabilities catalog, what can the platform do? User documentation, how can you use it? And the operator manual, how do you operate, how do you maintain the platform? Now, doing it this way means that every kind of use case has their own documentation, which means you reduce noise. So if I'm like using the platform, I don't have to understand every single configuration that ever existed for this tool, right? Right, so then after this, we iterate. We note observations, we generate insights, we correct our assumptions. Did it actually work? Maybe, kinda, but it's a lot of work. There is a lot of pushback, it requires a lot of patience, because if you don't measure something, it literally doesn't count. And for a lot of platform engineers, it's not quite clear, if I have this completely untechnical documentation like the capability catalog, how does it help me? So I had to do this presentation that I just showed you like 1,000,000 times, basically. And that's also the problem with DevRel in general. It's not immediately visible what the value is. It takes a long, long, long time. I will tell you a story, though. During a threat modeling workshop, one of the people who was quite skeptic and pushed back a lot, he was explaining to someone else why the capability catalog was so useful. Because you were able to threat model the capability, and if you changed the tool, you didn't have to change that again, right? You could just look at the capability as such, and that's why it was so important. And he explained that to someone else. And that was the moment when I realized that I turned an influential skeptic into a passionate advocate. So I want to leave you with this final quote that I came up by myself completely without AI. I'm saying that because it's true. In my mind, inner sourcing starts when the platform stops belonging to the platform team. And I know that we often say that if everyone's responsible for something, no one's responsible for it. But I don't believe that's true, because open source is a proof of that it's not true, that we can take responsibility for shared resources. Right now I'm working at Rabobank, and I'm in a situation, we don't even have a platform team. We have a platform marketplace. We have a group of teams that contribute platform products, and we have a group of teams that consume platform products. And our job is just to standardize on the product rather than the workflow. So very exciting, and I'm happy to talk about more after this talk. So that's all I have to share. Oh, I don't know what's happening there. But the slides are here if you're interested to look back. Again, there was so much content that I couldn't show you because I don't have 2 hours. But yeah, if the links are there, if you want to read a bit more into it. If you could please leave your feedback for this talk. I know the organizers want to know if these kinds of talks are interesting to you or not. That would be super, super great. And that is it. Thank you so much. I don't know if you have time for questions, but I'll be here.